I was on a road trip from northern Washington to southern Utah to meet up with my family for just a few days around Christmas. For the road trip, I rented an Airbnb along the way. Wasn't looking for anything great. Really just needed a place to sleep. So I found the cheapest place right in the halfway point in Idaho. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere, not near any towns or cities, but it was only a mile off the highway, so it was perfectly convenient for what I needed it for. I left in the morning and started getting close as the sun was going down. The section of Idaho I was in was covered in forest and seemed pretty uninhabited. Not a lot of houses or other places around, except for I guess the Airbnb. After a while of going down the highway, my phone told me to turn off on a very small dirt road. There were no lights or other indications that a path was even there. I drove slowly and carefully for the entire mile down this dirt road until I made it to the cabin. And on first glance, it looked way bigger than I expected. There were no images of the outside on the listing, but it said it was only a single bedroom cabin, so I expected something fairly small. I parked right outside the front. The whole forest around the cabin was dense and dark. I could hear all the birds and animals calling out as the night was coming in. I headed up to the door and legitimately almost had a heart attack when the door suddenly opened. "Didn't mean to scare ya," the man said in an overly friendly voice and with a wide smile. I was still recovering from the scare and confused who this guy was and why he was even here. He explained, the owner of the Airbnb. I think he could still tell I didn't understand, and that's when he said, "Your room is right over here." And I realized what this was. The Airbnb was a room in the cabin, not the whole cabin itself. I couldn't believe I'd made a mistake like that. I was sure it didn't say it was a shared living space. But at the time, and under pressure, I figured with the pictures not having shown the outside and it saying it was one room, it all made sense. I followed Charlie in. He led me down the long hallway all the way to the farthest room on the end of the cabin. The hallway was noticeably dark. Didn't have a single ceiling light or lamp or anything. Charlie gave me a key to the cabin and to my room, then gave another big smile and said enjoy, leaving me to settle in. I closed the door and tossed my bag on the bed. I really wasn't comfortable with being out in some isolated cabin in the middle of nowhere with a stranger. But it was an Airbnb. Surely it was fine. And the only reason I decided to follow through with it and stay is because I was just there for a single night. I was gonna chill in the room, get some sleep, and head out first thing in the morning. I tried to not overthink it. I unzipped my bag and started unpacking just the few things I needed for the night. A couple minutes in, Charlie knocked on the room door. It made me jump again because I never heard his footsteps coming down the hall. It was like he had just been standing there. I walked over and cracked it open. Wide, empty smile was beginning to come off as really creepy, and the overly friendly voice he was faking made it even worse. He asked how I liked the room. I just said it was great, trying to be kind and keep the conversation quick. He nodded and told me to holler if I needed anything else. I said thank you and closed the door, but this time I waited for a second. The guy didn't move for an eerily long amount of time before I finally heard his footsteps depart and walk down the hall. I locked the door. Something about that guy really made me uncomfortable. I knew he could have just been trying really hard to be nice and a good host, but it came off as fake and almost uncanny. I stayed in the bedroom for 30 minutes, staying on my phone and just listening to the cabin to make sure Charlie wasn't doing anything weird. I could hear the muffled sound of the TV in the living room start playing after a while, and so eventually I felt good enough to start getting ready for bed. I set my phone on the nightstand to charge, brushed my teeth, then got in the shower. It was one of those old tub showers that looked honestly disgusting. The shower curtain looked fairly new though, and was one of those blurry, kind of see-through ones. I turned the water on and tried to be quick, but only a minute or so after getting the water running, I heard a slight thump from outside the bedroom, like somewhere in the hallway. I moved my body out of the water and tried to listen. I didn't hear anything else, but for a split second I thought I saw something, like possibly a shadow, move in the bedroom. I saw it through the blurry curtain, and immediately opened it and looked out. See anything. I stood there looking and waiting for a minute, then quickly finished washing off and got out and got dressed. When I walked back into the room, I naturally looked toward the door where I heard the sound from, and felt the blood rush from my face as I saw the bedroom door was cracked open. Not fully wide open, but obviously it didn't matter, because I knew I had locked it. I stood there frozen for a second, then rushed over, slamming it closed and locking it again. Something was seriously wrong with this cabin, and I no longer felt safe at all, not with Charlie opening locked doors like that. Even just thinking about that stranger walking in with his creepy smile while I was showering gave me chills. I picked up my phone from the nightstand, and while I tried to figure out what to do, I opened the Airbnb app and looked at the listing. I was trying to see if others had reported strange behavior in their reviews. There were only 3 other reviews, giving 5 stars, but honestly, rereading them now, they looked completely fake. And even more unsettling, I realized I hadn't made a mistake at all. The listing said it was a standalone cabin, not some room in a shared residence. Nothing was adding up, or I guess everything was adding up, but in the most unsettling way. I needed to leave immediately. I packed the few things I had into my bag, then went up to the door and put my ear against it, listening to try and hear where Charlie was, and if I could make a quick exit without drawing attention. I heard the muffled TV still playing from the living room, which I knew was right next to the front door. But as I stood, I started to hear something else. Something soft, coming from inside the room I was in. I slowly turned around. I heard this low, raspy breathing from right where the bedroom closet was. I threw the bedroom door open and sprinted out of there. The living room was empty as I ran past it and right out to my car. I drove dangerously fast down the rugged dirt road until I made it to the highway, and after calling my mom in a panic, she convinced me to make a report with the police. I did, but I'll save you all the unimportant details, because let's just say nothing came from it. His disturbing, creepy behavior wasn't provable, and the only thing he actually got in trouble for was listing the cabin incorrectly on Airbnb. And just to add to the creepiness, Charlie wasn't even his name. Thankfully, the listing was removed for false advertising, and I never saw it get relisted, so hopefully no one else has to go through that like I did. Can't even imagine what would have happened if I didn't leave the cabin that night.